Okay, let's get started. Thank you all for joining us today. It's not too early to say happy holidays, obviously. My name is Joe Turner. I'm the host of the IMPACTability podcast. My pleasure to be leading our conversation today. And really, I was just thinking about this a little bit ago. Where did the year go? I mean, I looked down on my computer, it says December 8th. And I'm thinking, it just felt like it was June a minute ago. And now here it is December. It just goes like summer to November in a heartbeat. So as nonprofits, definitely this is the busiest time of year for us. We just had Giving Tuesday, lots of great success for Giving Tuesday across the area, across the nation, across the world, which is fantastic. I hope it was good for your organization as well. Now we're into all of the year-end stuff, and I'm guessing for most of you, probably your year-end is planned in the process of bringing in those last-minute gifts, so you can end the year strong, which is fantastic. Now, for others, especially those of you who might have a smaller staff, you might be kind of scared because, like for me, as I just said, the end of the year kind of snuck up on you. And you might be wondering what to do. Can you capitalize on it? Is it too late? Well, that's what we're going to address. But also, maybe you've got everything planned and you're all set for the end of the year. What about New Year? What do you got planned for 2023? Whatever side of the coin you are on, that is what we're here for today. Finishing strong and starting stronger to jumpstart fundraising for next year. So to help me with this conversation today, I've got some pros who have done both, finished strong and started stronger. First, let me introduce Debra Rahill. She is a senior consultant with Soukup Strategic Solutions. She has sat in the executive director chair many times. She knows this topic all too well. We also have Christine Rahill with us. Christine has led dozens of fundraising campaigns over the past 25 years. No stranger to hitting the ground running. So that's why we've got them both here today. Ladies, welcome to the webinar.
Thanks, Joe.
Thank you, Joe.
Great to have you. So now for our attendees, our panel loves questions. If you have one, put it in the Q&A section and we'll grab them during the course of our discussion. So let's get started, first of all, with personal experiences. Now, I know we've all had to burn midnight oil when it comes to end of year campaigns. Does anyone want to share anything from personal experiences? Debra, let's start with you.
Sure. I started an annual appeal campaign back in 2012, and I wasn't really sure how it was going to work out, but recognizing that 30% of all giving occurs in the month of December and about 10% of that in the last few days of December, it's definitely worth giving it a try. Even now, and when you're in December, yeah, it's definitely worth doing. But my experience over 8 years of doing annual appeals is to really keep track of what you're doing each year, make it a little different, tweak it, and see what a difference it makes. I will tell you one of them that we started out with no challenge match. And then about year 3, we introduced one and we never gave it up again because it made a huge difference in the response that we had from those that were donating. So there's just something psychological about a challenge match that really reaches people and they want to participate.
Yeah. Christine, what about yourself?
Well, I can't agree more with Debra on how to do a year-end appeal to your group of donors. I would also add that it's a great opportunity to reach out to your major donors as well. I always like to write a personal holiday card to them, but also give them a call at the end of the year just to find out what they're doing for the holidays and thank them for their support for the past year. Maybe have a couple of nuggets about the impact that they help the organization make because of their contributions. And that also helps set you up for a great relationship for the coming year as well.
Yeah, I agree. You know, I think, Debra, you said something a moment ago that triggered something in my mind. I'm wondering, what is it about the end of the year? And either of you can answer this question, but what is it about December, end of year, last week of the year, besides the tax benefits, obviously, that people feel so philanthropic? Is it just the holiday season itself, do you think?
Absolutely. I believe that everyone is, coming off of Thanksgiving where you think about your blessings and, just being thankful for everything. And it makes people stop when they get the kind of letters in the mail with an annual appeal that demonstrates and expresses a really high impact that they want to be a part of blessing somebody else through their donations.
Agreed. Agreed. So let's talk about one of the reasons why we're here today, the last minute, the no nonsense end of year appeal. There's not a lot of time on the clock. That's just a couple of weeks left of the year. Christine, let's be honest. Is it too late, really?
No, it's never too late.
No?
No, because I think, as Deborah alluded to, there's that spirit of giving, first of all. And then there's also the thought about, well, have I made my total charitable contributions for the year? Is there, did we do better than we thought and we have more to give? And who are our favorite nonprofits that we give to? And if you're in front of your donors, they're going to think about you when they make those decisions. So I always recommend that there be at least 2 appeals that go out, one early in December, one maybe the right after Christmas before year end, just to make sure we're in front of those donors, thanking them first for their support, and then also having an opportunity for donation as well.
Mm-hmm. So if you're saying that it's not too late, what can we do that would be easy to roll out while also still being effective? Debra, what do you think?
2 things, and this is really dependent on your donor base. If you can get that letter written and quickly in the mail, I would say by all means, put a donation card in there, a return envelope, make your appeal letter very high impact in terms of what you've accomplished, and a personal testimony from one of your clients with a picture. No more than 1 page, because nobody wants to spend time reading multiples, and it's expensive to do it that way. So get that in the mail and then follow it up with emails to let everyone know where you're at in terms of meeting your annual appeal goal. Make sure you set a goal. If your stakeholders, your donors all want to communicate with you by email, then forget the snail mail and get them an email regularly, maybe once a week, updates on where you're at, but always in that email include accomplishments for the nonprofit, another client testimony, but don't just have an ask, but make it informative, make it compelling, and include your ask.
If I could add to that, I think I would do the exact same thing, but I would also make sure to use your social media channels to help support your campaign. And that's a great place to, as Debra mentioned, you want to have a story about one of your clients. You can use video there as well. And so I would definitely recommend adding that into your year-end campaign just to support it and help tell your story to those channels as well.
Totally agree. And video speaks volumes every time we put it out there. So even if it's a video of a donor saying happy holidays, that's kind of the reverse of you reaching out to them. Invite them to say happy holidays to you and what you mean to them. And that, of course, would start the ball rolling with others joining in. And for me, on top of that, what would kind of be neat about that is that it might actually encourage more donations because they're seeing that other people really support you, and maybe they follow you, but they haven't sent anything. I mean, does that make sense to you, Christine?
Yes, in fact, I did a campaign once, which was the face of the donors throughout the year. And so we would feature some of the donors and they would tell their story of why they support your organization, why it's important to them, why they're passionate about it, why the mission means something to them. And that was very successful. Sometimes you can also incorporate your board members as well into a campaign as like the face of the donor as well.
Right. Normally for a fundraising campaign, we talk about segmenting our list. Do you think that'd be a good idea, Debra?
Yes, indeed. And you can segment it in so many ways. So following through on what Christine was saying, those that are on social media, those that are comfortable with the email, that's one segmentation. Another one would be those that don't get on email. If you send it to them, they don't open it. There's, you can track that. Get hard copies of things in the mail to them. And you can segment it by age. You can segment it by the size of the gift. You can segment it by how many times a year that they give, when they give. So there's multiple ways to really understand your donor, understand what's motivating them, and tailor your annual appeal to that motivation level.
Agreed. Just want to remind everyone that if you have any questions, put them in the question and answer section. We got something from Nicole. Nicole, thank you for joining us. Just because of Florida and fellows, we need help in, and with this topic, just because they as organizations do not do well with Giving Tuesday, and as part of position as a fellow, I will need to encourage and support and think outside of the box to fundraise for various reasons. I like that. I'm turning to my mentors here to help me, let me say that again. I am turning to my mentors here to me, help them, us, succeed in 23 with this topic for Florida Sand. And thank you all. I know where you're going with that, Nicole. Hold that thought for a minute, because we're going to get into that in a few. We're right now just kind of covering the end of 22. If there are organizations that haven't done what they should, or just they just, the year snuck up. Like I said at the beginning, year totally snuck up on me. And of course, that means all of the things that I need to get done before the end of the year. And here we got a couple of weeks left of the year. Is it too late? I mean, that's, that is definitely something to think about, especially when you talk about snail mail. And I think someone mentioned that a moment ago. Let's talk about snail mail. If I'm going to get something out now, is snail mail the good idea? Email, both? What do you say, Christine?
Well, I think it's important to know your donor base and, what they respond to, because donors like to give in the way that they're comfortable, whether it's writing a check and sending it in the mail, or, clicking donate now in your email. Mm-hmm. It's a little tight to pull off a snail mail, but it's not too late to do that, especially if you've got, your content ready and a good printer that can help you out at the last minute. But I think that it's very important, like I said, to know your donor. Mm-hmm. Also, there's a much can be a larger cost with snail mail. On the other hand, I also just like to write personal notes to my major donors at the end of the year too. And that's another way of communicating with them. You're building a relationship with your donors at whatever level. So it's important for them to feel like they have a relationship with you and the organization, no matter how you communicate with them.
Agreed. Debra, do you have anything to add to that?
I think Christine nailed that one.
Yeah. I mean, I think snail mail is okay, but I think at this point, with not a lot of time on the clock, I think what you probably want to do is just get that letter out as soon as possible, get it written, make sure it looks good, and maybe put a graphic with it. But for the most part, get it out there with a gift card, the donor card, and just by all means. But I think a lot of effort needs to also be put into email, so you can reach as many of your constituents as you can. Let's talk about the letter. Let's talk about the messaging for a minute. What is the verbiage like? Who wants to take that one? Because that can be really tricky, especially this time of year, at the end of the year. What does the message look like?
I can take that.
Yeah, please.
Christine, please add on. So you want it to be short and succinct. You want it to be compelling, 1 page max. Start it off with something that's going to really catch the reader's attention. They've got a lot of distractions. We all do. But what makes them want to read through the rest of your letter? So is there something in particular that's happened? I mean, for Florida hurricane, Ian is on the front of everyone's mind. Nonprofits can talk about that impact to them and then lead from there. Other natural disasters across the states or something else that's been a high impact in the community is always good. But then make sure that you're expressing what the nonprofit has done this past year, the impact that they've had, the lives that have been changed. Go into that personal testimony with a picture, and then follow it up with what the needs are, enable the nonprofit to go forward. If you've got a challenge match, put that in there, and then just close it out with a lot of thanks and gratitude. And one time we even had a client write the annual appeal letter with help, but it was signed by a client just saying, I've graduated from the program. I'm now involved out into the community, and shared about what was going on in that person's life and what the nonprofit had done for them. It was very successful. So there's a lot of
Great idea.
different ways you can think about that.
Yeah.
I love that idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Debra hit it on the head on the content. The other thing I would just say is, since we talked about segmentation earlier, you might want to think about having 2 versions of that letter. One for those who gave during this calendar year, and those who didn't, your Libent list. So I would think about personalizing each, thank you, donor, for giving this year with all the content that Debra gave. And then the other one, thank you, Debra, or Debra, we haven't heard from you this year. We want to make sure that, you've heard about what we're doing. We hope that we'll get you back as a donor. So I think it's a good opportunity to personalize it and also segment your list and refer to their past giving.
Yeah, which shines a light on the list itself. The more information, the more segmenting that you can do with your list, the better. I mean, just by running reports, who gave this year, who didn't give this year. So if even that much segmentation alone, this group of people did not make a gift this year, this group of people did, and then segment your list accordingly, like you just said, Christine. I love that. Absolutely. Is there, excuse me, I think you mentioned this, Christine, is there a best time to get the message out, and how many messages am I sending? I mean, sorry, my voice lost all of a sudden. I know you said something about sending one maybe right at the end of the year, right before the end of the year, maybe a week or 2 before Christmas. What does that timeline look like, Christine?
Well, and as we all know, in fundraising, it's an art and a science, right? So it's partially knowing your donor database and how much solicitation you've recently done with Giving Tuesday just in the rear view, right? And then how much watching your unsubscribe rates. I got to pause here to tell you about a client that we just learned about this week that sent so many emails during Giving Tuesday that their unsubscribe rate doubled.
Wow.
And the lesson they learned, though, is obviously not to send so many, but they could have sent some of those messages through social media and not, filled up email boxes. So these are all things to think about as the recipient. We all get emails, we all get solicitations. We know how we feel about how much is too much. But I don't think it's too much personally to do 2 in December. One early on in December, and then one right after Christmas when all people are settling down a little bit, but before December 31st. And with that one emphasizing a little bit more about the tax deductibility.
So Debra, let me ask you this. I know you've worked with a lot of major donors in the past. Do you send your end of year message to a major gift prospect that you're working on? You might have a timeline in your mind set up for them, moves management kind of thing. But do you send it to a major gift prospect? Is there anyone that you don't send to?
I would, based on just generically, broadly, I would definitely be sending that letter because, again, it's a touch point that you'll have with the major donor. Also, I would send the annual appeal to everyone that you have on your list. That would be funding agencies, that would be corporate sponsors, funding agencies, but I should have clarified granting agencies, because they are not going to necessarily respond with a donation. But again, it's a touch point, and it delivers a very compelling message that they're going to read, and don't expect a donation, but just give them an update on what's going on. And I think too, you need to understand who your donor base is. And I think maybe a future webinar, I'll just plant a seed as for a donor-based management system and how important it is, because you can't do the segmentation very well without it. But if you've got a donor base that's seasonal and they're going back and forth between North and South, when do you want to release your annual appeal letter? In Florida, a lot of times we've released very early in November, and then followed up hard copy in early November to try to catch the movement of where they're at, get them before the holidays really kick in, and then do updates along the way over the course of the rest of the year through email. That gives you time, if you get a returned envelope, that you can readdress it and get it going in the right place, because people will move over the course of the year, and you need time to be able to respond to that. So it's very important to look at an annual appeal as, if you're going to do the mailing, as keeping current with where your donors are at. And if you have something that's returned, it's a great time to call and say, saw that your annual appeal letter was returned. Would like to catch up with you on everything that's going on. So don't look at it as just a time to raise money. Look at it as a time to communicate and stay in touch.
Christine, anything you'd like to add to that?
I think Debra's covered it. The key is, like you said, touch points and timing. I'd say the only prospect or donor I wouldn't send it to is if someone specifically said, I don't want to get these emails, or I've made my gift for the year and it was significant. That'd be the only person I would consider taking off that list, because I think Debra hit it on the head. You're still telling your story, your stories of impact and what the mission is.
Is there a sense of urgency that we can add in this message? How would we do that, Christine?
Well, I think Debra mentioned before, if you're fortunate enough to have a fundraising goal or a match that you're trying to make by the end of the year, that would be something to highlight. And then, of course, even though we know donors don't give just for the tax deduction, the year-end tax deductibility of the gift is something that you could mention as well.
Yeah, great information. So far, so good. We've been talking about the end of the year and how it's not too late. You can still get something out. I mean, the last week of the year, you can get something out. Just to touch them and just say, hey, please think about making a gift. But now let's go on the other side of the coin. We're all set. We've got our letter out already. Debra, you said sometimes early November you're sending something out. So, okay, we're fine with that. We've got the new year coming, and we're trying to think about how maybe we can kickstart our fundraising for 2023. So let's move into that part of this discussion. And again, if you have any questions you'd like to ask our panelists, put them in the Q&A section, and we'll grab them and put our panelists to the test. So now let's talk about things that might be trending in the world of fundraising. Debra, are there any new fundraising ideas that you've seen or heard of that you'd like to share with us?
One of the things, and I don't know if it's really new, but it's worth thinking about. So you have to send year-end tax letters out, right? They have to be out before, I believe, the end of January. And why not create a fundraiser through that? So when you send the end of year tax letter out, include a donation card and a return envelope, and just give a short explanation as to why or what it is that you're doing. One of the things that I love that I've seen done in different states with community foundations is they have a give where you live. So it's a 24-hour period of giving. And it's usually, like I said, done through a community foundation, and charities are selected and then they're promoted through this day of giving And so that's a great way, if it happens to coincide when you're sending out your tax return letters, to ask your donors to make a contribution to that. And it's also very compelling because a lot of cases, the community foundations will create matching opportunities. So you're not just getting a donation, but you're getting a match for different reasons. So it all depends on how that community foundation works that, but it's a lot of fun. And I've really seen donors respond to that.
Excellent. Christine, how about you? Any new fundraising ideas that are trending that you've seen?
Well, events are back, right? I
Yeah.
mean, we've
Great
been
point.
back and forth, hybrid, remote, but they seem to be back with a force. And I think we've all learned a lot, right? Well, hopefully we've learned a lot about, what makes an event successful, what intrigues someone to attend. And also, I've worked with a lot of clients about, the bottom line. I mean, the ROI in events can be very low if you don't spend, some thought on strategically, how are you going to make that net revenue as high as possible? So some of my clients have learned that, they might have gotten in a rut. They've done the same event year after year, but it's really not bringing in that much fundraising revenue. Now they can take a step back and say, look, let's redo this event. Let's think about it in a way that not only will be a great way to engage people, bring in new donors, but also ultimately raise the most money. And also what's helping that is there's so many new platforms, right, out there for live auctions, showing fundraising goals being met throughout the evening, texting to your phone. So I think there's a lot of creative new ways to come up with ways to engage your donors, your prospects, your volunteers through events in the coming year.
Yeah, I agree with you, Christine. And if we want to make the new year more successful in terms of our fundraising, one of the things we need to concentrate on, obviously, is trying to get some new donors. So in the new year, what do you think, Christine? How do we attract more donors, new donors?
That's one of the toughest questions, I think, for a fundraiser every year. Well, as we know, they need an affinity for your organization and potentially an introduction. So how do we make that happen, right? Well, we make that happen through our board members and volunteers who bring in their peers. We might make that connection through the parent or grandparent of a client that can come to the organization. Events, like I mentioned earlier, are a great opportunity to bring in new potential donors. And then, of course, any ED knows that through their networking, getting out in the community every week and meeting people at events, it's another way to bring in new donors as well.
Agreed. Debra, anything you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, a few ideas. One would be to, if you have a large donor or volunteer base, is to do a bring a friend day. So if the volunteers are working with your clients or with programs, ask them to bring a friend along, and then do something special at that day for the introducing those people to the nonprofit. The other things would be talk to your board, talk to some of your key donors and very engaged volunteers if they would like to host a fundraiser in their community or at their home. And then the third would be corporate sponsors. I was just talking with the client about this, that the corporate sponsors have their network as well with their client base. Is there an event that they could host where you would be able to invite some of your stakeholders, but they could invite their clientele as well? So it depends on what your strategic relationship is with your corporate sponsor, but it's certainly worth considering.
And let's talk about fundraisers. They are fantastic ways of getting new donors, at least people interested in what your organization is all about, in your mission. Debra, you've done a lot of fundraisers before?
On and off. We've, like I said, these different things that I just mentioned, we have done. And some of them can be very successful. Some of them, you just don't know until you give it a try, and tweak it and learn from it and grow with it. but sometimes it's just one or two new donors that bring in their network that can make a big difference. So it's always good to be looking at different ways in which you can do that.
Yeah, it's all about who your donors know to kind of have them find out more about what you're doing. And if they're passionate about your mission, you certainly hope that some of their friends might become passionate as well. Now, Christine,
Exactly.
how about you in terms of friend raisers? Have you done them successful? You like them? Are they definitely something we need to look at more often than we have in the past? Now that, especially now that COVID's over.
Well, I think it's great that Debra brought up the corporate donors. I think you can do that with your major donors as well. If you've got a board member or a major donor that's willing to host an intimate event in their home, they've got maybe a special spot that they could invite their circle of friends or the board circle of friends in to hear from a client, hear about the organization in a special, very special intimate event. I think that's something to think about as well. It can not only help build your donor base, it can help build your board prospect base and volunteer base as well. So there's a lot of different ways to do events. You know, we always think of the gala first, but these intimate events can be very successful at raising funds for a specific goal or a specific purpose, and also prospecting for board members.
Yeah. Now, you both consult many clients on fundraising strategies. That's what you do, and you both do it so well. What would you say is the one thing that most nonprofits should do or change with their fundraising plans for 2023? I know it's kind of a loaded question. Debra, what do you got for me?
I think that you need to lay out a plan for the entire year and look at the events and the activities that you have planned to make sure that you're reaching a diverse audience. So some people are going to want to come to your gala. Others are going to say, that's not of interest. Breakfast is going to be great for me, or lunch is going to be great for me. So again, it's segmenting your donor base, it's understanding who they are and what they like, and then making sure that what you're doing across the year is touching everybody and touching them in different ways. And some people are going to want to do all the events. Some are only going to pick one and do that. So make sure you're paying attention to that.
Yeah, and I would add that it's a good time to sort of reflect on the stories that you've told this past year, and what are the stories you need to tell next year. And think about each of your donor segments: corporations, major gift donors, as Debra mentioned earlier, community foundations, your individuals, donors, your volunteers, and your board members. What do they care most about? And then how can you incorporate that into your plans to engage them, to cultivate them, and to keep them feeling like they're part of your family going forth? So I think it's good to just think about those strategies. What are the different touch points throughout the year with the different groups, and what will make the most sense to drive fundraising revenues in the coming year?
When it comes to events, Debra, something you said kind of tipped my brain into something here. Let me ask you, when it comes to events, let's talk about the gala. Everyone has the gala every year. It's a beautiful evening, and there's a lot of work that we do, but we do realize some significant revenue from that. And also let's talk about meeting new people, getting new people involved. That's all fine. But is it sometimes would it be a plan, I should say, to maybe look at different times of the day to do an event? Maybe you do a luncheon, or maybe you do a breakfast or something like that. Would that make sense, or am I just off base?
No, it totally makes sense, because you've got people that don't want to drive at night. You've got people that are working and they don't want to be out in the evening.
Right,
But
right.
But again, that, what I mentioned is segmenting, understanding your donor base, and then creating those different opportunities that are going to appeal to different preferences. You have to have that in terms of your fundraising strategy. And one thing that Christine said that triggered another thought in my mind is, as you're putting together your fundraising strategy, do you have a theme for the year? And if you develop that theme, it should be part of the stories that you compile. It should be the pictures that you're taking, and it should carry through from your fundraising events all the way to the annual report. So it gives your all of your communications and activities a common thread through the year, which I think is fun.
Yeah, yeah. Christine, what do you think? Different times.
If I could build from that, one of the things that I found successful thinking about themes is starting your own giving day.
Yeah.
We all know about Giving Tuesday, but if we could come up with a day that's meaningful to the mission of the organization, for example, if the organization serves young mothers, maybe you do a giving day around Mother's Day. And I think that has shown in the past, in my experience, to be something that your donors and prospects have more of an affinity for, because you already know they care about that cause of yours. And it's clear of all of the other noise that's going on in Giving Tuesday. Not to say you can't do Giving Tuesday as well. You probably want to have a presence out there. Right. But I've seen more success in fundraising around a giving day that's tailored to the nonprofit sometimes than Giving Tuesday itself.
Yeah, that's a fantastic idea. And I'm going to encourage our attendees to not only put questions into the Q&A, but also for this next segment, put your ideas as well, because what you just said, Christine, gets us into my next question, or my next topic, if you will. I'm looking for those random tips for fundraising ideas, something that maybe you do that just works. And you hit the nail on the head. That is a fantastic idea. Something for 2023 that maybe you're not doing, or others should be doing, or try to do. For me, I think 2023 would be a great year to maybe make it a goal to increase your monthly gifts, especially, for some nonprofits that have cyclical fundraising. Monthly gifts, that kind of just helps keep the gifts coming in throughout the year. And Christine, your idea about Giving Day versus Giving Tuesday, I like that. Debra, you got one for us?
Whoa, I'm not I'm not coming up with anything specific on that. Other than
I
what
could
we've
actually
already talked about. Go ahead, Christine.
Right.
If you don't mind, I want to jump in on the recurring gift idea, because
Okay.
I really think we could take it a step further. I completely agree that to drive fundraising revenues in the long run, moving more of our donors into recurring gifts is the way to go. So how do we do that? Well, we want them to set it and forget it, as they say, right? And so we need to tell them about two things. One is we need to provide them with perks. What are the perks to recurring giving? One, maybe we're going to treat our recurring donors in a special way, and we're going to call them out at events. But two, isn't it a perk that maybe you get one statement in January, to Debra's point, before the end of the year, that has all of the recurring gifts, and then they have the option to not get a monthly request for gifts or statement. So you can talk about, what are the perks that you can provide to recurring donors. Secondly, I think donor honor rolls are very important. And I'm surprised that not everybody has these on their websites, but they've been very successful for me in the past, because as we know, people compare to others. Well, how is so-and-so giving? And, oh, maybe I should give at that level. And so I think to segment your donor honor roll and have that available online is very important. Third, I think early in the year, you should sit down with all your corporate donors, and you should talk to them about what their plans are, what are their business goals, so that you can find what maybe there's some alignment with your mission and your projects for the year with their goals. Banks, for example, right now are very interested in financial literacy programs. So if your nonprofit has anything that offers financial literacy training to their clients, they've got CRA goals that they have to meet. And that's something that I've talked to several banks about for some of our clients, and they've been very interested in partnering with nonprofits, not only as donors, but considering coming on as board members as well.
Excellent. Excellent. Nicole, you raised your hand. I'm going to click you in here so you can ask. I think you had a question or something, Nicole. What did you have? Oh, I'm sorry. I got it. have to unmute you. Okay, having a little technical problem. I'm sorry. There. There you are.
It's okay, Joe. Joe, let me know when you guys get to the point where I can describe why I was asking my question. If you guys
please do it now.
Okay, no problem. So I started my job on Monday with Florida Stand. So I'm a first year fellow for Florida, contracted employee for Florida Stand. And one of the topics that we had on Monday at our regular fellows meeting at 2 p.m., as well as our Florida Stand Board of Directors meeting at 7 p.m. on Monday night, was the fact that our Giving Tuesday campaign on our website went to the toilet, pretty much tanked.
Okay.
And yes, Florida Stand is our board of directors and our fellows that are either first or second year are also required to get the word out about fundraising. And one of the ways they tried to do it this year was through social media. But, I'm coming to my mentors because I just became an employee of contracted employee with Florida Stand, and now they're looking to me because I was hired because I have somewhat experience being a part with residential options of Florida, and then being a part with you guys, as well as other things I've done in my history. That's one of the reasons why I was hired. But major gifting and all that stuff is still something I'm learning about.
Right. Well, I tell you, first of all, the good news here, Nicole, is that after the webinar is over, we're going to have someone get in touch with you. You're going to get a free session with one of our consultants, and you can kind of ask those pointed questions. What did we do wrong? But I think, Giving Tuesday all the way through the end of the year, it really is all about how you're working your messaging. I mean, I'm taking a guess. Christine, what do you think her issue might have been?
Well, I think there's a few things that she needs to look at, right? She needs to look at who is the list that it was distributed to. What kind of communication have they had in the past? Mm-hmm. What was the communication, like you said, the messaging for Giving Tuesday? What was the open rate? I'd also want to make sure that it's very easy for the donor to click few times to get from the email to the donate page. Yeah. Sometimes there's a lot of friction there that's built in depending on what you're using for your software platform. So those are the things I'd want to know. And also, were there any other appeals leading up to it? As I mentioned earlier, sometimes we can over solicit and turn people off. So those are just some of the things off the top of my head that I would look at.
Yeah, I think a little digging needs to be done, but it could be a variety of things. Deborah, anything you wish to add to Nicole's situation?
Yes, I think that Giving Tuesday is not just an event. It is a lot of work that the nonprofit has done leading up to that day. And so to just think that Giving Tuesday is going to accomplish your fundraising goals, that's really misunderstanding what's going to motivate your donors. And that's that they've been communicated with throughout the year, that they've been inspired and motivated to give. And then you use Giving Tuesday as one means of doing that, one opportunity.
Agreed. We've got a couple more minutes left. If anyone, our attendees, has another question they'd like to ask, now's a good time because we're going to slowly wrap things up. Any final thoughts about 2023, Christine, in terms of fundraising? I mean, you might say keep doing what you're doing, but how much analysis do we need to do to really kind of look at the entire picture, maybe look at the entire 2022 and dig into what worked and what didn't?
Absolutely. I think you want to pull your donor reports early in January for the full calendar year and just take a deep dive looking at them. Not just what happened in 2022, but then over the last 3 to 5 years. and, make some decisions on your fundraising strategies based on what you think has done well, and where are there opportunities. That's what we're always doing as fundraisers, right? Where's the opportunity for growth?
Yeah. Debra, any final thoughts?
No, I think we've covered a lot of territory.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, we wish everyone the best, but there's so many things, especially with smaller staffs. There's so many things that you have to be paying attention to, and at any given moment, it's this, it's that, it's this. So every day is different, but every day can be kind of stressful. So I would say, from my vantage point, I would say, and Debra, you touched on this earlier, develop that plan and stick to the plan, because if you don't, what is it? If you fail to plan, you plan to fail, right?
One thing that I would add to that in terms of your plan is share that plan with your key stakeholders, and also make sure that you're involving your volunteers, that those fundraising events, particularly if you have a small staff, it is so important to get them to be volunteer led, that there's a volunteer chairing them, that there's volunteers that are making all of the other aspects of the event possible. So don't just rely on staff.
And we didn't even touch on that subject. That's another great subject for another webinar in terms of volunteers. We always have to be thanking our volunteers. They are absolute gold when it comes to nonprofits, big or small, because they're doing it out of their heart. They're not doing it for a paycheck, and they really truly believe in what you're doing. And they truly, again, Debra, you and I did a podcast a while back about volunteerism. They truly can make a huge difference, and we need to pay attention to that.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, ladies, I want to thank you both. First of all, again, I thank you, but also happy holidays to you. You both have been fantastic to have on our panel. Great insight, extremely helpful insight. We'll be sure to have you back again soon. And for our attendees today, this is what we're talking about. This is what our webinars are all about. When we can reach out with different topics, by all means, send us topics that you'd like to hear us discuss. You'll get a survey in your email shortly that will, one of the questions is, what do you got? What would you like to hear us talk about? We're going to bring in more panelists, more experts on these subjects. So again, thank you all for joining us today. Ladies, happy holidays to both of you.
Happy holidays.
Everybody. Bye now.
Also want to remind everybody that we will be giving a special holiday gift to our attendees, a free 30-minute strategic coaching session. So be looking for that email as well. One-on-one meeting with a consultant, a coach, to kind of help give you some additional support for 2023. Again, thank you for joining us. Happy holidays to everybody.